Jimin shuts down reporter insulting Jungkook. His brutal one-liner will shock you live. During a live broadcast, Jimin defends Jungkook with a shocking one-liner, igniting a media storm and unearthing secrets they'd rather keep buried. Ask that again, and the only thing you'll be reporting is your resignation. The words whip through the press room like a snapped cable. Cameras tilt, red tally lights blink alive, and a hush just heavy enough to be heard falls over the crowd. Jimin steps forward, the silver knot of his tie catching the stage lights, his expression the calm eye of a gathering storm. Next to him, Jungkook's gaze is a flat lake with something dark moving underneath, the sort of stillness that hides a dangerous undertow. The reporter, young, eager, concealing a hunger he thinks is professionalism, holds the mic like it will save him from drowning. It won't. The insult had been clean as a knife. A sly question about Jungkook's past, about patterns and fragility, dressed in the polite suit of concern. In the first row, Hannah manager, fixer, the one who carries a little sewing kit for everything broken stiffens, her pen freezing over the margin of her notebook. Somewhere up in the scaffolding, a cable creaks. The smell of hot lights and hairspray, sharp and electric, thickens. Jimin doesn't raise his voice. He never needs to. He simply steps into the shot, shoulder brushing Jungkook's sleeve in a small, grounding signal, and looks directly into the reporter's face. Not the lens, the face. You can see the producer in the back cutting angles, a frantic sign slicing the air. Camera 2, camera 2. Jungkook answers real questions, Jimin says, eyes steady. The microphone held low like it's incidental. Try asking one. The reporter blinks. He had rehearsed this. The way he'd nuance the words so they wouldn't look like an attack, how he'd tilt his head and insert a sympathetic nod to sell it as concern. But there's nowhere to set those props down now, not with Jimin sanding the moment of its varnish. I only meant, the reporter begins, you meant to bruise and call it journalism. Jimin lifts the mic just enough, and the room hears him breathe once. Leave the bruises to the choreography. For a beat, nothing exists but the soundboard's faint hum, the heat pressing like a hand on the back of the neck. 100 breaths held captive. Jungkook's breath is the only one Jimin follows. The soft inhale he recognizes from nights when stage smoke felt too much like old fear. A quiet nod, almost an exhale and gesture passes between them, and is gone. The reporter recovers. That's what you do when a live moment goes feral. You herd it back with a chuckle, a rephrase, a pretend we're all on the same side. Fans, he says brightly, merely worry about consistency. You had a rough year. And some patterns. Jimin tilts his head, and something ancient and patient looks out through his eyes. Consistency, he repeats. Tell me yours. Are you always this small? Gasps. Muscle memory spreads through the room. Cameras tighten their crops. Thumbs skim notifications. Interns' eyes go wide with the knowledge that something marketable just happened. Hannah's pen scribbles again, a note to pre-write a statement that dodges bullets and claims it was a dance. Jungkook finally turns toward Jimin, the corner of his mouth almost tasting a smile, but there's tremor in his fingers. He tucks them against the cold curve of the mic, hiding the quake. The moderator, a man built of professionalism and apologetic smiles, steps in with a new question about the album's concept. But his words are confetti in a windstorm. The room's oxygen is fixed to what just happened. It will be replayed in slow motion on channels that never understood music until it bled on their floor. Jimin knows this and does not care. He can carry that weight like he carries harmonies without breaking them. He nods at the moderator, answers the album question cleanly, gives the metaphor about winter bones thawing in spring, about the way a melody can rebuild something that lived wrong inside you. Jungkook picks up the thread with a small anecdote about a chord progression that fought him and then became a home. Their voices move in parallel, and the room remembers why it brought microphones in the first place. But beneath the practiced answers, the story that brought them here shakes its chains. Jimin can taste it like copper. Last autumn's collapsed schedule, the week Jungkook slept in other people's kitchens because his own stove kept going out. The boy who learned applause before he learned how to disappoint politely. The manager who used to say, "You'll thank us later," like a blessing, and meant it like a debt. Those things don't die, they molt, they change shape, show up as questions with nice shirts on. When the moderator calls a break, Jimin lowers his mic and steps back, letting the light slip off his face. There is a small sound tink from the stage as someone sets a glass down too hard on the craft services table. Torches of gossip already flare in phones. He watches Jungkook roll his wrist once, a private ritual, loosening muscles that tightrope walk through the segment. Jimin touches his forearm quick, brief, more weather report than comfort. Still raining? Yeah. Did I overdo it? Jimin asks, voice casual, a note of humor cut into it like a wedge. Somewhere between, let me be ridiculous and tell me I was right. Jungkook shakes his head. His mouth shapes a silent thanks before sound returns. You saved me twice. Only twice? Jimin pretends shock. I'm slacking. They slip behind the curtain into a corridor where air smells faintly of wet cardboard and new paint. A standee of their own album cover leans crookedly against a column, their mirrored faces caught mid-laugh. Jimin pauses in front of it, tilts it straight. There's a language in small corrections. He speaks it fluently. Hana catches up with them, breath measured, high heels whispering like restrained arguments on the floor. Damage control, she says without preamble. It's going to trend. What's the hashtag? Jungkook's grin is crooked, but there's a tremor in it, the echo of a stage that demanded too much and then asked for more. Probably Jimin Savage or Protect Jungkook or both. They'll clip your one-liner, Hana says, giving Jimin a look that's both exasperation and pride. We'll release a statement about asking respectful questions, blah blah, mental health, art, accountability, truth, but neat. Jimin nods. He can do neat. He can also do messy if he must. He grew up learning which shape floated best. He wanted a bruise, he says. I gave him a lesson instead. Hana's phone buzzes. She glances at it, then away, this time more carefully. It's not just him. She turns the screen to show a thread of messages, a contact saved only as M. He's back. The letter lands like a dropped pin in a silent church. Jimin hears his own breath land in his chest. Miss you. The man who used to know their rehearsal schedules better than they did. The one who read comments to them like scripture and told them to worship engagement at all costs. The one who left with a quiet settlement and a louder grudge when they chose their health over his metrics. What does M want? Jungkook asks. His voice is almost steady. Meet, Hana says. Says he has context we're not seeing. Says he can make it go away or make it worse. Jimin smiles without humor. He always loved a binary. Behind them, the crowd begins to fill the corridor with sound again. The gear rattle clack of cases, laughter at nothing, the backstage orchestra tuning up to chaos. A stagehand runs past carrying a coil of black cable that looks like a sleeping snake. Somewhere, distant applause, recorded and real blending into a texture you can't separate. Not today, Jimin says, with the confidence of someone who can't afford to be wrong. He doesn't get to ride this moment like it's his. Hana nods. Then we play it our way. Keep it human. Keep it us. She taps a note on her phone. Her fingers, logic and speed. We have 3 more outlets waiting. You don't have to take the 4th if it's the same guy. It won't be, Jimin says. He knows that hunger. It doesn't exit through the same door twice. It wants a new angle, a new scratch on a different side of the vinyl. He rolls his shoulders back, returns to the lights. They step onto another set. A smaller one sofa, politely neutral carpeting, a plant trying too hard in the corner. The host is warm, her eyes truly present, and for a while Jimin can let language replace armor. They talk about songwriting like it doesn't always cut something out of you first, about how stress turns touch into static and hugs back into poetry when you're ready. Jungkook laughs the real kind, the one that lifts his whole face like dawn, and the crew laughs with him not because someone told him to, but because the sound is contagious. Mid-interview, a monitor displays a split screen, their current feed on the left, the earlier confrontation replaying on the right. It's muted, but Jimin can still hear it in his bones the way his voice threaded into the insult and untied it. He meets his own eyes on screen and sees the boy who once learned that the quickest way to quiet a bully was with a joke so precise it left no place for comeback. He also sees the man who's learning that sometimes silence is the better cut. Today was not that day. When the segment ends, the host leans in with a conspiratorial smile. That line, she says softly, off-air but on the record of memory. I wish I had it in my pocket for half my life. Keep it, Jimin replies. Use it on yourself, If you ever start believing people who want to shrink you, by the time they make it to the car, evening has started to unravel the city's polish. Neon and rain share the street, and the world smells like ozone and newly opened umbrellas. The driver opens the door with a practiced nod. Inside, the leather is cool and unforgiving, and the tinted windows turn the city into an aquarium of shifting light. Jungkook drops his forehead against the glass, watching the blur become readable street signs, dim halos, the red pulse of a distant ambulance. "Do you ever get tired of defending me?" he asks, not looking away from the window. It's a simple question, and it carries a freight train's worth of history. Tired? Jimin pretends to consider it, then shakes his head. "No, of explaining people to themselves maybe." Jungkook smiles, a quiet crescent. "He deserved it. He deserved to learn," Jimin corrects gently. "But I wasn't teaching him. I was speaking for you. Those are different things." They drive past a billboard, their faces 10 meters high. Someone had chosen a shot where Jungkook's eyes are storm silver and Jimin's mouth is caught mid-laugh. The rain makes it shimmer, like the city is applauding and crying at once. "My mom called," Jungkook says suddenly, still watching the city. "She said she saw it live. She asked if I was okay." "And are you?" He rolls the thought around like a coin between fingers. "I think so. I hated how quiet I went. In my head I snapped back, said the perfect thing, and the room cheered. In reality, I was counting the lights." "Lights are good to count," Jimin says. "They never lie. 1 is 1, 2 is 2. People are harder." "Tell me again what you tell yourself before the stage," Jungkook says, voice low, like the car could spill it if he speaks too loud. Jimin turns, studies him. He knows every version of this face. Boy wonder, tired man, artist, orphan of other people's expectations. He knows the way a question like this is also a hand reaching out in the dark. "Breath doesn't belong to fear," he says. "It belongs to songs. If my heart races, it's because it wants to dance. The lights are not a verdict. They're a welcome. And I don't have to be perfect to be true." Jungkook nods, a small, steadying motion. "I like the part about the lights." "Then keep it," Jimin says, tipping his head against the seat. "Use it on yourself." Hana's phone glows again from the seat beside her. She watches it, then swipes it into quiet. "He'll keep pushing," she says without looking up, "and no one needs to ask who. He knows where your soft spots are. He knows where they used to be," Jimin corrects. "That's not the same." Traffic slows to a lullaby of wipers. The driver hums under his breath, unaware it's one of their B-sides. The world is, for a sigh of a moment, not a stage, not a battlefield, not a headline farmer's field. It is a car with 3 people who have learned too many hard lessons and are still choosing tenderness as a strategy. A notification pings on Jungkook's phone. He checks it and huffs a laugh. "They made a fan edit already," he says. "You look like a superhero, Jimin. There's this lens flare they added, it's ridiculous." "I am a superhero," Jimin replies solemnly. "My cape is just more fitted." "Don't encourage them," Hana mutters, failing to hide the smile climbing up her face. They pull up to the studio, the night manager waving them in with a familiarity that says, "Family more than business." Inside, rehearsal lights are different, soft, disciplined, true. The room smells like rosin and dust, and the clean tang of fresh water from a cooler that's lived too many lives. Mirrors run the length of one wall. In them, they are both infinite and contained. 2 men, small and huge at the same time. Jimin drops his bag, scrolls through the track list, picks a demo that only exists here raw, almost feral, still wearing the bark of the tree it grew from. Jungkook rolls his shoulders, shakes out old fear like a coat that no longer fits, and nods. The speakers thrum alive. A beat unfurls across the floor like a dare. "Again from the bridge?" Jungkook asks. "From the breath before it," Jimin says. They move. They move like boys who learned early how to negotiate with pain, like men who refused to accept the terms. The floor is cool under thin soles. Sweat writes small salt, runes at the edges of their hairlines. The world shrinks to the length of the mirror and expands to everything they can imagine. Every now and then, they glance at each other, counting not the steps but the aliveness inside them, testing if the needle still points toward true north. It does. After an hour, the music pulls itself into silence, exhausted and satisfied. They stand panting, hands on knees, the kind of tired that buries anxiety and plants relief. The mirror offers back 2 faces, flushed and unafraid. "Do you ever think," Jungkook says between breaths. That maybe this is the only place we answer everything? Jimin considers the windows, the night pressing its face against the glass and fogging nothing. Maybe, he says. But today, we answered out there too. Jungkook walks to his bag and pulls out a plastic clamshell case, opens it to reveal a cracked pick he's kept too long, the edge worn smooth by nerves. He turns it in his fingers, then pockets it again. I'm going to text him, he says. The reporter? Hana asks. Jungkook shakes his head. No, M. He looks at Jimin, not asking for permission, just aligning. I'm going to tell him we don't need him to translate us to ourselves. Hana studies him for a heartbeat, then nods. Say it clean. No anger for him to use, just truth. Jungkook types, thumbs steady, back unbowed. When he finishes, he shows it to Jimin. The message is simple. We're fine. Find another story. Jimin reads it, then looks up. The room hums low with the afterglow of work well done. His chest loosens. He thinks of the boy who once believed defense was a reflex. He thinks of the man who now knows it can be a choice. Good, Jimin says. Let's go home. The city outside is the same city they drove through an hour ago, and not the same at all. Rain has rinsed it. Neon has forgiven it. They step into it not as men who are ambushed and survived, but as artists who wrote their names onto the weather and watched it change. Somewhere, the clip loops, captions editing themselves to fit new understandings, angles worn down by re-watching until they reveal a truth. It's not about the line, it's about the person who stands next to you when the line is needed. And, if anyone asks, Jimin will say the one-liner came easy because it wasn't a weapon. It was a boundary. It wasn't a performance. It was a promise. He will say the reporter wasn't his enemy, just a reflection with its lights off. He will say the only thing more breathtaking than the silence after a well-placed word is the music that follows when the people you love know they were worth defending. Tonight, the music follows them out into the street, unamplified, unscripted, the kind that sounds exactly like the rhythm of two pairs of footsteps ducking under one umbrella, heading where the lights are, not a verdict but a welcome. The metronome dies mid-measure, its woodpecker peck snapping into silence. The rehearsal room exhales rubber floor, warm dust, a faint bite of metal from the rigging. Jungkook stands center, one hand on his chest like he's testing a door that won't open, pupils pinned in two bright lights. Sweat threads the curve of his jaw. Jimin crosses the space in 3 steps, palms out, not touching yet, voice careful. Breathe with me, he says. The way you talk to a skittish animal or your own mind on a bad day. In, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. The speakers are still alive with phantom reverb. The room's only other heartbeat is the air conditioner grinding like it's negotiating with summer. Hana stands by the console, eyes already mapping exits and next steps, the corner of her notebook bent under her thumb. On the far wall, mirror Jimin and mirror Jungkook appear smaller, safer, a duplicate world where no one leaks anything, and time is a hallway without cameras. I'm okay, Jungkook says, but his voice is too thin for the size of the room. I know, Jimin replies, which is truer than it sounds. He shifts half a step closer, and Jungkook's shoulders drop a centimeter, a precise release like a valve turning. The door knocks once and opens without waiting for permission. A junior producer slips in, apologetic smile stapled on. He's clutching a tablet like a life raft. You should see this, he says, and the apology falls off. On the screen, a clip has already learned to sprint. A few seconds from an earlier rehearsal, a line sung raw, throat not yet warm to its own weather. Someone's caption shouts over it, off key. Again. The audio's been stretched and pinched until the wrong notes show up like a bruise that's been underlined. Comments multiply with the weird intimacy of strangers inspecting a wound. Hana's mouth tightens. Where? She asks. Everywhere, the producer says. And then, to shrink the catastrophe into something manageable, he adds, it's trending. Jimin doesn't look at the tablet for long. It's a cheap edit, a smear tinted to look like truth. He turns back to Jungkook, who's watching himself sing badly in a room designed to help him sing well, which should count as a miracle or a crime, depending on your belief in fairness. Stop looking, Jimin says gently. It's not the thing. It is, Jungkook says, because he's honest even to his own panic. He swallows, once, twice, the way he does when words threaten to stick. It's me. Failing. Again. Working, Jimin corrects. Not failing. Working looks ugly until it doesn't. Hana taps the screen twice, absorbing every angle a single frame can hold. Her phone buzzes a text from the contact, saved as M, and she doesn't open it. She knows how those messages are built. Scaffolding made of binaries. Bait disguised as insight. I'll find the source, she says. Who uploaded first? Who played telephone best? Give me an hour. We don't have an hour, the producer says reflexively, because his job is time and panic stuffed into an orderly blazer. We do, Jimin says, because his job is music and people. He puts his hand on the fader nearest him and slides it to mute, a small ceremony that names this space theirs. We always have time to get the truth right. Jungkook's fingers worry the seam of his jacket. It's an old habit, as grounding as counting lights. What if the truth is I'm not consistent? He asks, voice quiet like a confession. Not to avoid being heard, but to keep from breaking what hearing costs. Then the truth is, you're human, Jimin says. And the work of art is being human out loud. At that, something unclenches. Jungkook nods once, twice, and the world gets one notch wider. The room smells like rosin and floor wax, and a little like rain sneaking in through a poorly sealed window. Jimin gestures to the sound tech in the booth. No click, just keys and beat. Low. They run the bridge again, the one that always tries to escape their hands. No metronome this time, just a piano line that feels like telling a secret to someone who keeps it, and a drum soft enough to be a pulse. Jungkook comes in a hair late on purpose to remind himself he's not chased by time. His voice at first is cotton rough, then satin sure. Between phrases, he looks at Jimin, who answers with a nod that means, keep going. They land the line clean. When the last note fades, Hana looks up from a blur of notifications like surfacing from a long, cold dive. I can't stop it, she says, honest. But I can drown it. How? Jungkook asks. By making it boring, Hana says. And when he frowns, she adds, by making it true. Post the full rehearsal. Raw audio. Full take. No sweetening. Tell them it's practice because it is. The producer pales. You can't show them process. We can, Jimin says, already picturing the caption in his head. We're working. Here's what that sounds like. We don't owe perfection. We owe honesty. Hana's mouth quirks a fleeting gratitude for the way they make her job harder and simpler at once. Okay, she says. But if we do this, we also sing live today. Somewhere small, somewhere clean. You take back the narrative with your lungs. Jungkook's shoulders rise and fall. He looks toward the mirror and sees not a product, but a person he's still learning to defend. Fine, he says. We sing. They choose a radio station with carpeted walls and mugs that never match. The kind of place that loves music more than viral moments. The host has a laugh that wrinkles her nose and a habit of humming along under her breath. As they set up, the engineer wipes down the mics with lemon disinfectant. The smell is sharp and ordinary. The foam windscreen kisses Jungkook's lips when he leans in. He can feel the texture tiny pores. Quiet give. Half an hour before airtime, the earlier reporter appears, hovering in the doorway like a thought no one invited. He holds his press badge like a talisman. Jimin meets him at the threshold. The corridor amplifies small sounds, the squeak of a sneaker, a cough caught at the edge, the tap of Hana's pen against her clipboard. 3 precise beats. Jimin's face is polite and not soft. We're here to sing, not to litigate, he says evenly. If you want the music, stay. If you want the moment, you had it already. For a second, the reporter doesn't know which version of himself to be. Then he nods, a flicker of what might be humility crossing his features, and steps back. He stays. He puts his phone away when the light goes on. Maybe he's learning. Or maybe he's just calculating. It hardly matters. The mics are ready. On air, the room grows honest. There's nowhere for ego to hide inside a dynamic mic. The host asks a question about the new single, and Jimin answers it like he's writing a postcard to someone who used to live in the same heart. Jungkook follows with the why behind a metaphor, hands loose at his sides, voice low like a promise he intends to keep. Then, They sing. They don't choose the single. They choose the B-side that grew in the dark, quiet, stubborn. The one that knew it was valuable before anyone else did. The first chord finds Jungkook's chest and rearranges it into a house with all the lights on. The second chord finds Jimin's ribs and turns them into a frame that doesn't need to be braced. Together, their harmonies slide into place like a door that's been playing true. People in cars pull over without quite knowing why. People at desks stop typing and let their hands forget busy. The room smells less like lemon now and more like wood warmed by sound. When it's over, the host blinks like someone who stepped into rain and didn't get wet. "That," she says, not trusting more words. The engineer gives a small clap without meaning to. In the corridor, the reporter makes no sound. His eyes are on the floor. Learning or calculating, again, it doesn't matter. By the time they return to the studio, Hana's posted the full rehearsal take. She kept the creaks and the footsteps and the count-in. She wrote, "This is how we work. Sometimes it's messy. Always it's real." Comments bloom like a healthier kind of wildfire. "Thank you for showing process. I needed this today. You sound beautiful even when you think you don't. There are bad ones too. There always are. But they're quieter in a room full of singing." M texts back at last. When Hana finally opens it, the message is as predicted. "I can make this go away. Or make it worse. Your move." She shows it to them, like you show a child the shadow under the bed, so they can see it's empty. Jimin shakes his head. "Our move is already on the board," he says. "We sang. We posted. We're done." "Block him?" Hana asks. "Mute him," Jimin says. "Let him whisper into a pillow." They stay in the studio because the weight in their bones says they're not finished. Not with the day, but with themselves. The piano's top is cool under their forearms. Jungkook finds a pick in a cracked case and flips it through his fingers like a coin until the nervous energy loses its currency. Jimin straightens a stack of sheet music, the way he straightens anything he loves so it can stand better on its own. Earlier, Jungkook says, drawing the words out, "I thought I wanted to disappear. In that first clip, my head went small, like one bad note could shrink an entire life." "I know that thought," Jimin says. He doesn't say I used to live inside it. He doesn't have to. "But we don't pay rent there anymore." Jungkook nods, throat working. "Thanks for cutting the click." "Always," Jimin says. "But next time, cut it yourself if you need to. You don't need my permission to protect your voice." "I might need your reminder," Jungkook says, mouth tipping into something that isn't quite a smile and is better because it tries. "But I can practice." They practice. Not the song. The silence. Standing in it. Not flinching. Letting the room hold them. Without applause. It feels like learning a new muscle and realizing it was always there, waiting for attention. Night finds them with hunger. The honest kind made by work. In the studio kitchen, they boil water in a battered kettle that screams like an old bus. The instant noodles smell like comfort and childhood. And MSG's generous arms. Hana eats perched on the counter, heels finally off, posture melting down to true height. She tells a story about her grandmother sewing pearls into a wedding dress one by one. The patience of making something gleam. The image softens the day. After, they drift back to the rehearsal room because they're magnets and mirrors, and this is where the pull ends. The floor has cooled. The air conditioner learned to be gentle. Jimin lays his jacket down as a pillow. Jungkook throws a hoodie over him without comment. They stretch out, not across from each other, but parallel. Two lines that don't touch, and also never leave. "Do you ever think," Jungkook says into the dim, "that consistency isn't about never shaking? It's about what you do while you're shaking." Jimin smiles at the ceiling. It's an ugly ceiling. Dotted foam tiles, fluorescent ghosts. He likes it anyway. "I think that's the only version worth trusting," he says. Their phones lie face down on the floor. The city's neon hum is a rumor behind thick glass. Somewhere, the internet keeps doing what it does, chasing itself in circles, insisting on endings in a world that prefers middles. In here, the day has a shape and a soft edge. They're not heroes or victims. They're artists who worked, who stumbled, who didn't hide the scrape, who sang anyway. Sleep comes not like a door slamming, but like someone turning down a dimmer. Jimin hears the last of Jungkook's breath even out. The sound, a kind of proof. He closes his eyes on a room that has learned their names and keeps them. When the light in the hallway clicks off, the dark doesn't feel like verdict. It feels like welcome. And in the morning, when they wake on a floor that smells like yesterday's effort, they will stretch, they will stand, they will warm up, and they will begin again, not to prove the clip wrong, but to prove themselves right. Jimin's voice slices through the in-ears as cleanly as a scalpel. On stage, the charity gala looks like a galaxy glittering donors in black and gold. The smell of warm champagne and lilies. A ceiling like a midnight sky spiked with glass stars. The band stutters a heartbeat. The click bleeding confusion. Jungkook's foot, mid-step, lands a half-inch to the left of certainty. For a terrible second, the speakers cough up the ghost of a rehearsal, an early, unfinished cut with doubled vocals and a brittle EQ someone sharpened on purpose. It sounds like accusation masquerading as music. Jimin lifts his hand palm flat. The signal as old as their first tour, and the drummer's sticks freeze over the snare. A wave ripples outward. Guitarist, keys, bass. The machine stops. The room doesn't. People keep smiling because that's what you do when you're dressed like money, and someone spills a secret near you. Jungkook turns his face toward the lights. The heat presses against his cheekbones, and he feels for the old panic, the one that loves an audience and a mistake in the same breath. He hears his heart go to pieces and then gather itself with a discipline years in the making. He counts the front row. 1, 2, 3 tables anchor points. Jimin steps into his periphery, a lighthouse made of posture. No tracks, Jimin says quietly, teeth barely moving around the mic. We go clean. The strings section, a hired quartet with nervous smiles, waits with bows hovering like question marks. Hana stands at the wing, the line of her mouth fixed in a calm that means violence is being prevented purely by managerial will. In the booth, the engineer's hands flutter helplessly over faders, a silent Hail Mary thrown to signal flow and gain structure. The host, poised, practiced moves toward the stage with cardstock cue cards pressed to her chest like armor. She stops when Jimin drops to one knee to talk directly to the first violin. The world narrows, heartbeats slowing as he speaks just loud enough for them to hear. Can you give me the melody in A minor? He asks. No vibrato, just the line. We'll take it from there. The violinist nods, relief and terror, hitching a ride in the same blink. Jimin rises, slides the mic back toward his mouth, and looks at Jungkook. The look says, you already know how to do this. The look says, let them witness the part where we make it. Jungkook inhales like the room belongs to his lungs. From the breath before the bridge, he murmurs, a shared language that drops his shoulders a fraction. Then, full voice, into the ballroom's bright quiet. We're going to give you something true. The violin enters like a string pulled from a sweater and measured against the air. Clean, unadorned, human. Jimin takes one step closer to Jungkook and matches the pitch with a hum that vibrates the center of the stage. Keys slide in soft as a hand on a sleeping child's back. The room remembers how to concentrate. Jungkook sings the verse like he's speaking into someone's palm. The roughness at the edges of his voice isn't a flaw. It's proof of life. Jimin answers him in harmony, the kind that doesn't show off so much as hold. The hall's shiny surfaces conspire to make a cathedral, and for 3 minutes the sabotage becomes an altar to the opposite of that. Presence, refusal, the decision to bloom exactly where someone tried to salt the earth. The last note climbs a narrow stair and stands there, steady. Silence folds over it like a coat. Then the applause, the real kind, starts close at the back of the stage where crew know the difficult when they see it, and travels outward until the room is standing. Not polite, not performative. People who have purchased applause before recognize the difference and are quiet in a new way. Backstage, the hallway smells like hot cables and perfume. The floor's black tape lines lead the way like constellations someone designed for a ship that never lost its way. Hana meets them at the curtain with eyes bright and hands full of steamed ceramic cups that make their fingers smart with heat. Jimin takes his with a nod, and Jungkook wraps both palms around his, as if the warmth can finish what adrenaline started. How bad? Jimin asks. He's looking at Hana, but he's listening to Jungkook's breath. Even now. Even bad enough that I'm on a first-name basis with 3 of the venue's security guards and a fire exit, Hana says. And there's humor in it to keep anyone from breaking. The playback rig got a new USB right before your set. It looked like a patch file. It wasn't. It was tagged with a contractor's credentials that shouldn't exist. Mo. Jungkook says, tired without letting it show. He leans his shoulder into the wall and feels the cheap paint catch on the fabric of his jacket. It smells like him. He doesn't know how to smell like anything else, Hana replies. But I won't move on this until I know. We're not building a case on scent. JIMIN watches crew sprint past with a rolled carpet, one end flopping like a defeated wave. He thinks of how many people it takes to make 1 minute of grace happen, and how much damage one person can fashion with a thumb drive and a grudge. We don't have to say his name to anybody, he says. We just have to keep making the thing, and maybe make it harder to break. In a corner of backstage, the earlier reporter sits on a crate, press badge turned backward, shoulders curved inward like punctuation. He stands when they approach, but doesn't lift his phone. I didn't record the scramble, he says, eyes on the floor. It didn't feel like... He stops. The word he's looking for is earned. He swaps it for one he trusts more. It didn't feel right. JIMIN tilts his head. The urge to shape the man into an opponent has softened into something else. Not forgiveness exactly, but precision. Thank you, he says simply. You stayed. You listened. The reporter nods. He tugs at the fraying cuff of his blazer, a new tell to match the old ambition. You made my angle irrelevant, he says. And it isn't an accusation. It's relief, almost. I'm going to write about what you did instead of what went wrong. Write about the quartet, Jungkook says, surprising himself. They pivoted with us. That's a skill. The man blinks, then scribbles something unreadable in small, cramped letters. He looks up. Do you think it was... He doesn't finish the name. He doesn't need to. I think some people mistake intimacy with access for ownership, JIMIN says. And they get confused about what they're owed. The reporter nods like he just got handed a key. He folds his notebook in half to keep the words from escaping and disappears toward the press room with his badge flipped the right way again. In the green room, the air is cooler. Someone has arranged fruit in a way that implies apology to the fruit. A couch large enough to insult a smaller couch sprawls under a framed poster of last year's headliner. JIMIN sits, then stands again because his body isn't finished with movement. Jungkook peels an orange in a spiral that stays intact, attention tethered to the easy work of making a circle out of something that didn't arrive as one. Hana scrolls like she's stitching, eyes skimming, thumbs decisive. Our feed is a war zone, she says, not unkindly. Half of it's awe. Half of it thinks you planned it. A sliver of it's telling other people what to think. They always do. Let them, JIMIN says, and realizes he means it. The fatigue that comes after a fight lands in his bones like a weighted blanket. He lets it. What's next tonight? A meet and greet with donors, a photo line. Then you can go home, Hana says. I'll send a tech to strip the racks. No more patch ports. Everything gets an actual lock you can see. The door clicks and the quartet's first violin peeks in, bow case held to her chest like a book. They're sending us home, she says, eyes huge with the kind of adrenaline drop that makes the floor look farther away. We just wanted to say thank you for trusting us. JIMIN bows slightly in the way that makes formality human. You saved the set, he says. If you ever need a recommendation, tell them to call me. The violinist lights up like someone gave her a second birthday. We'll frame that, she says earnestly, then glances past him to Jungkook. Your voice, without the everything it was. She shakes her head because the dictionary is no use here. It was brave. Thank you, Jungkook says, and finds he's not embarrassed by accepting it. You were too. They leave as quietly as they entered, the way real professionals vanish without needing to widen a door to accommodate their exit. Hana watches them go and rubs her wrist where a hair tie has left an imprint. I've got a name, she says softly. The credential on the USB belongs to a freelancer who once interned under him. Not a smoking gun, but a fingerprint smudge on the doorknob. We're not detectives, JIMIN says. We don't fix people. We fix systems. He looks at the poster on the wall until his reflection appears in the glass, a faint double looking back. And ourselves, when we can. The meet and greet is a blur of well-meaning hands. Wealth wears cologne that tries to be subtle and fails. Diamonds flash like small, nervous fish. JIMIN smiles with his eyes and lets his mouth rest. Jungkook has perfected a nod that says thank you without promising too much of anything. People say generous things in confident voices that don't ask for answers. Cameras cut seconds out of them in bright bursts, and pull those seconds away on tiny screens. A woman with hair like lacquered waves grips Jungkook's elbow and leans close. "My daughter watches you," she says in a rush, a confession. She thinks she has to be perfect to be seen. "What you did out there." She bites a manicured lip. "She might sleep tonight." Jungkook feels the room tilt toward meaning and tries not to drown in it. "Tell her," he says, finding the words on the first try. "That messy is how masterpieces start." It's a line worth printing, but he says it just to her, because he has learned the difference between something that belongs on a poster and something that belongs in a heart. The night ends without further sabotage. The stage becomes a room again. The stars in the ceiling learn that they are bulbs wearing costumes. Outside, the city has put on a slick of rain, enough to gloss the sidewalks into pretty treachery. The car smells like leather and city, and a faint whisper of citrus from the orange peels stuffed into a pocket. "Home," Hana tells the driver, then sinks back into her seat and stretches her neck until it pops. "Tomorrow, we change the way we plug in. Actual cables, visible chains. Less magic, more muscle." "Magic survives muscle," Jimin says. "It's stubborn like that." Jungkook watches buildings slide into each other like songs blending between stations. He thinks of of the way power tries on different outfits and thinks no one will recognize it. He thinks of the reporter's new quiet. He thinks of the quartet, of the violinist's bow hand when it stopped shaking because someone asked her to play like a person, not a job. At a red light, he turns to Jimin. "Earlier," he says, "I heard the bad track and felt the floor drop. I thought, this is the trap. Then you said we go clean, and the floor came back." "It was always there," Jimin says. "The trap was pretending we can't stand on something we built." At home, the apartment exhales them like guests who are also owners. The kitchen is small and true. The stove works because a friend who knows things about wiring fixed it one afternoon while they wrote a chorus. There's a plant on the sill that refuses to die, and therefore counts as aspirational. Shoes come off and land in a grazing herd by the door. Coats hang like tired arguments, resting between rounds. Jimin fills a kettle and enjoys the way it huffs before it boils. Jungkook pulls a sweatshirt over his head and stands for a moment in the familiar dark of fabric, the small, safe cave of it, then emerges hair wild and smiling at himself, for no reason that needs naming. He leans on the counter and watches Jimin's hands. The way they are precise, even when they're doing something as ordinary as measuring tea, with the stubborn generosity of someone who doesn't trust spoons. "Play something?" Jungkook asks when the cups go warm between their fingers. Jimin nods. The guitar leans where it always leans, as if it knows about this moment ahead of time. He flicks a pick he found on the shelf. Someone wrote courage on it with a marker that bled and answers the question with a chord that opens the room like a window. Jungkook hums along. Not words. Not yet. The melody finds a thread between them that the day couldn't cut. They don't write about sabotage. They write about the look on the violinist's face when her hands remembered they could be steady. They write about the taste of relief that comes after risk that wasn't chosen, but was still survived. They write a line that holds in its smallness something big enough to carry them to another day. "Your voice is the place I go when the noise forgets my name." When the song decides it's done for now, it sits like a warm animal over their knees. They record it into a phone because sometimes catching the first breath is better than catching the perfect take. Jimin playlists it with other small, beautiful things. An old demo named Daylight with a lowercase d. A voice memo of Hana laughing so hard she sounds like a different person. The sound of rain 2 tenants ago when the window leaked and the bucket was a percussionist. Jungkook texts Hana the audio file with no caption. 3 dots appear, then disappear, then return. "It's beautiful. Sleep. Both of you. We fortify tomorrow." They do. They make lists on paper because screens have teeth. Hana draws boxes and labels them with her particular brand of tenderness. Locks, verifications, who gets to plug into us and when. Jimin cleans the edges of a plan until it feels like design, not paranoia. Jungkook calls the quartet's contractor and learns all their names and says "thank you again" like it's a verse that can bear repeating. Late, when the apartment is quiet enough to hear the old pipes talk to themselves, Jungkook stands by the window and watches the streetlight paint the road, a patient yellow. He remembers a version of himself who would have crawled under a table to hide from a night like this, who would have swallowed every word rather than risk the taste of being misunderstood. He presses his palm to the cold glass and doesn't flinch. Behind him, Jimin says, "Breath doesn't belong to fear." Jungkook smiles without turning. It belongs to songs, he finishes, and to laughing at ourselves when we're too dramatic. You? Never. Jimin is a grin, even in the dark. They laugh quiet because the neighbors sleep. They drink the last of the tea, even though it's gone cold and bitter in a way that still comforts. They put their phones face down like talismans that work only by not being touched. When they finally reach for sleep, they do it without ceremony and without an audience. In the morning, the videos will still be there. The accusations will still be hungry. The systems will still need building and rebuilding. But the song they coaxed from a bruised hour will also be there, humming under everything like a floor that holds. The violinist's bow will be steadier. The quartet will tell the story of the men who trusted them. The reporter will file a piece that costs him a little and buys him back something he thought he'd traded away. And Hana will arrive with lox and coffee and a plan written in kindness and bolts. They will begin again, not to fight a shadow, but to make a light steady enough that the shadow knows where to sit. "That's my voice," Jungkook says, not quite whispering, as if speaking any louder might give the sound on the phone more power than it already has. The audio snarls through cheap speakers in the corridor outside Studio B, a hallway that smells like solder and coffee gone heroic. It's a boy's voice, thinner at the edges, fighting the shape of a song that isn't his yet. You can hear the scrape of a metal chair leg, the click of a pen, a man's sigh in the background that manages to sound both bored and hungry. The timestamp in the corner of the screen is a decade old. Hannah doesn't swear. She closes her eyes for one heartbeat and then opens them sharper. "Turn it off," she says. And the junior tech fumbles the volume down like it's temperature control. "Who posted?" "A burner," the tech says, cheeks blotched with the panic of having to talk. But it jumped fast. People are saying, "They always say," Jimin cuts in, gentle and precise. He places his palm between Jungkook's shoulder blades, a pressure point that says, "Here, now, together." The muscles under his hand are taut as wire. He can feel the breath, the honest equipment of it. Working hard. Jungkook looks at him like a swimmer at a ladder. "He kept that file," he says, more statement than surprise. "Of course he did. He's betting the past is more interesting than the present," Jimin says. He's wrong. The red on-air light above the studio door flashes twice and goes sleepily dark again. They've got 20 minutes until the network segment, a daytime show with a host who bakes anxiety out of the room with kindness and jokes about her clumsy dog. The plan was simple. Play the new arrangement live. Talk about the charity. Leave more sincere than they found it. Now, the plan looks like a thing that didn't anticipate a familiar blunt instrument. Hannah slides her phone into her pocket like she's holstering a weapon. "We can get it taken down," she says. "We can find the path. Who sent it to whom? Which server it rested on to catch its breath. We can make a statement. Or we can make a different choice," Jimin finishes, because their options always multiply into the same shape. Hide or reveal, flinch or be seen. Cook? He could say, "I don't want to be 14 on the internet again." He could say, "That boy learned to sing under fluorescent lights and judgment louder than applause." He could say, "I don't owe anyone the sound of my breaking voice." He could also say, "I want to own it." He finds the line between those truths and balances on it like he's rehearsed. Maybe he has. "We share it," he says. His hands stop twisting the hem of his jacket. "But we frame it. We tell them what they're hearing. And we sing today anyway, the way we are now." Hana nods. The nod has victory baked into it. "I'll prep the caption. You record the intro on my phone 1 minute. You don't apologize. You contextualize. You're not a guest in your own story." They duck into an empty voiceover booth, the size of a modest closet. The air is warm, and the foam walls have that faint, dusty smell of old vows. Jungkook holds the phone up, sees his face reflected back older, truer, still the kid too, and hits record. "This is me at 14, he says. He keeps his voice in the pocket where sincerity sits. "Learning, missing, trying again. Someone kept this to hurt me. I'm sharing it because I'm not ashamed of learning. If you're at the beginning of anything, I'm proud of you. Now, I'm going on air to sing the same song with the voice I've earned. You can come with me if you want." He stops. The silence afterward is clean. Jimin, in the doorway, smiles with his eyes, which is the way he says, "I saw you tell the truth, and I'm better for it." Hana posts it, She doesn't wait for consensus. The video slides into the stream of oxygen. Everyone is breathing and changes its composition a little. Comments start up like rain. Loud, messy, sometimes sweet. She doesn't read them. Not yet. She's counting cables. Inside Studio B, the set is a well-lit living room that has never been lived in. The sofa fibers whisper when you move wrong. A bowl of lemons squats on a side table like a thread of color correction. The house band is good in the way of house bands. Polite and nimble, happy to follow. A stage manager with a headset the size of a confession moves them into their marks with hands that conduct even when he's not meaning to. The host greets them with hands that are warm, skin creased where a life has been. "We saw your post," she says, low enough that the mics miss it. Breaks my heart and makes me proud at the same time. "You okay?" "Working," Jungkook says, and she grins like he told a good joke. The on-air light wakes up properly. Cameras tilt their glossy eyes toward them. The bandleader raises his eyebrows in a question. Jimin shakes his head once. No track, no sweetening. The band nods back like soldiers at a border that isn't there today. The first note is a soft fact. Jimin plants his feet, light on his knees, the way he learned when stages tried to throw him. Jungkook's voice arrives with its whole history folded inside it like a map. You can hear, if you know what to listen for, the boy who used to panic at the word again, the man who built patience into a muscle, the artist they became because they couldn't bear the alternative. Halfway through, a monitor near the ceiling flashes muted footage. Their posted clip beside the live feed, past and present twin, cued. A producer has a sense of narrative, clearly. It should feel like exposure. It feels like a timeline drawing itself straight. By the last chorus, the room is a vessel with a small, fierce flame inside. Crew members lean without realizing. Someone in the back sniffles rudely and doesn't wipe it away. When the song lands, it lands like a bird that meant the branch, not the wire. The host doesn't jump in. She lets the moment breathe. Then she says, bright but careful, "You two make the case that the middle is where the good stuff happens." She winks at the camera. "And now you've made me cry on a Tuesday." Off air, the applause is shy at first, and then more honest. The bandleader taps his music stand in lieu of a standing ovation. The stage manager pretends to be allergic to something and clears his throat twice. Back in the corridor, their phones are a pocket full of volcanoes. Hana holds hers out. He replied, she says, and the temperature in the hallway drops a few degrees that no HVAC can explain. Im's message is short. It always is. He's learned that fewer words mean more room for projection. "If you want me to stop, you know what to do." Jimin reads it twice to make sure he isn't inventing extra cruelty. He isn't. "What did we used to do?" Hana's laugh is entirely humorless. "We used to let him co-own us. In emails, in edits, in permission structures. He wants that lease back." "Then we don't renew," Jungkook says. The steadiness in his voice is new, like a bridge he built at night, and only now trust enough to cross. Draft the cease and desist. But also mute. It's more effective than it looks. "We also shore up," Hana says, already in motion. "New protocols. Who handles archive? Who has keys to rooms, physical and metaphorical?" They shore up. The afternoon becomes screws and signatures. A locksmith with hands that move like a spell. A new server with a password system that isn't a punchline. The archive is moved from a dusty back office where history could be borrowed to a cold room with appropriate reverence. Jungkook and Jimin make a list, a deeply analog one, of where their voices have lived. Hard drives, laptops, old phones. It feels like building an altar and a fence at once. Between tasks, they eat whatever the studio can provide that isn't beige. They fail. The egg sandwiches taste like memory foam. Jimin jokes that he still prefers instant noodles because they don't pretend to be anything but themselves. Jungkook pours hot water into a paper cup and watches it blush around a tea bag, realizing that the act of waiting is, weirdly, starting to feel like strength. The reporter finds them at dusk, in the loading bay where the air smells like rubber and relief. He has a printout in his hands, ink, that still looks a little wet. He tries to hand it to them, then thinks better of it, and holds it up like proof that doesn't need to smear their hands. "I filed the piece," he says. "I wrote about the gala, the pivot, the quartet. I left the old clip out. Not because it's not news, but because it's not the news." Jimin studies him. The man is still made of appetite, but the menu's changed. "You didn't have to come tell us that," he says. "I did," the reporter says, "because last week I would have done the other thing." He swallows. There's a kid in him too, facing a mirror he doesn't always like. "I'm trying to be consistent in a way that matters." Jungkook doesn't say good. He doesn't absolve. He nods like the wind changed, and he noticed. "Thanks," he says. "Right about the locksmith too. People think art is just what you see. It's also the doors that didn't open for the wrong hands." The man smiles, small and real. "That's a line," he says, and for once it doesn't feel like theft when he repeats it back. He leaves with his printout that already looks like an artifact from a marginally better era. Night brings the city's better smells. Rain on hot stone, bakery yeast blooming somewhere, a hint of someone's cologne that isn't trying to impress. They walk home because the air asks to be carried in lungs instead of a car. The route is muscle memory. The crosswalk at the corner always clicks late. The cat on the stoop always pretends not to know them and then purrs like a small motor when they pass. At the apartment, they take their shoes off like a salute to floors that have held them through worse. The plant on the sill is tangibly pleased with its own resilience. The kettle on the stove feels prophetic now. It sings before they ask anything of it. JIMIN disappears for a minute and returns with a small box that looks like it used to hold jewelry and now holds something heavier. He sets it on the table and opens it to reveal 2 keys on a plain ring. They're unlabeled, unadorned, the kind of keys that only mean something because someone decided they do. The metal flashes dully in kitchen light. "New lock for the archive room," he says, and slides one to Jungkook. "You keep yours, no spares." Jungkook picks it up. It's heavier than it looks. He turns it over in his fingers, sees the teeth like a skyline. "I used to think keys meant you could get in," he says. "Now they feel like you can keep out what you need to." "Both," JIMIN says. "That's the trick." They eat late and simple. Rice with egg and the green onions that refuse to die on the windowsill. Soy sauce that tastes like every kitchen that loved you. Hannah texts a photo of a door with a new plate and a caption that says, "Fortified." She adds a voice memo. The locksmith, laughing the way men who believe in craft laugh. After dinner, they call Jungkook's mother. She has already seen the clip, both of them. She has opinions about men who keep other people's childhoods in drawers. She has advice about keeping warm. She asks if they're eating enough vegetables. She tells Jungkook that the first time he sang off key, he was 3, and stubborn and sang again, and then he didn't. She tells JIMIN to watch out for him when he gets quiet, even if he says he's fine. She ends the call by blessing them with the authority of someone who has survived not being listened to. They laugh easier after. They clean the kitchen like men trying to earn the right to sleep in a clean house. They each pick up an instrument, guitar for JIMIN, because it's how his hands speak when words go thin. A cheap keyboard for Jungkook because its plastic honesty makes him brave. They don't aim for a song. They let one happen anyway. It starts with a rhythm from the kettle's ghost, that whistled interval, misremembered correctly. It layers with a left-hand pattern that sounds like walking home. JIMIN finds a melody that doesn't show off and then, halfway through, refuses to apologize for being beautiful. Jungkook sings nonsense first, then finds words that are barely there and exactly enough. "We keep the keys where we can find them. We keep the doors that let us through. We keep the light on in the hallway, so the us that's coming home knows what to do." They grin at how earnest it is and don't take any of it back. They record it on a phone like every important thing they've made in rooms that didn't understand their importance yet. They name the file keys. They put the phone face down and agree without saying that they won't post this one. Not now. Not as a tactic. Just as a thing that belongs to a night that didn't ask for permission to be gentle. Before sleep, Jungkook stands in the doorway of the room where their coats hang. He slips the new key onto his ring with his house key, his bike key, the key that no one remembers what it opens and nobody wants to throw away in case one day a lock recognizes them. He likes the weight. He likes the small clang it makes when the ring settles. In bed, he doesn't scroll. He pictures the boy in the clip, the way his brows knit between lines. He doesn't flinch. He tells that version of himself, "We made it here. We made it in ways that didn't require us to go missing." He falls asleep faster than he expects. JIMIN lies awake a little longer. He listens to the building, to its bones shifting, to the couple upstairs who argue with a rhythm that says they must love each other because otherwise, why would they bother to get it right? He thinks of the reporter's shoulders when he said he did it differently. He thinks of M, of the smallness masquerading as control, and he doesn't feel rage so much as a fierce commitment to not letting smallness draft their days. Morning arrives with an unremarkable light, the good kind that doesn't insist on metaphors. The kettle is eager. The plant is smug. Hana's text arrives at 7:12 with a screenshot of a takedown notice that did what it was supposed to. She adds, "Also, your post has 1 million kids saying they're going to keep trying." I think that's the metric that matters. They dress without hurrying. They take the long route to the rehearsal space, past the baker who knows their names and pretends not to, around the construction where the air tastes like Earth's old perfume. The studio door has a new lock that clicks like a metronome deciding to be kind. Inside, they find the world where their bodies know the steps before their minds do. The mirrors reflect and don't judge. The floor remembers their weight and accommodates. They warm up together, scales that rust out the stiffness, stretches that remind bones they're on the same team. A tech tests the new backup power for the soundboard. The hum is lower, steadier. "From the breath before the bridge?" Jimin says. "From the breath before the bridge," Jungkook says. They begin. They don't check their phones. They don't adjust what doesn't need adjusting. The song opens like it's been waiting for them in the room all night. They meet it there, not as men being hunted by old versions, but as artists who have learned that the only thing you can stage with predictability is your own courage. By noon, they are tired in the kind of way that means they've done exactly enough. They drink water from the cooler that hums pleasantly and tastes faintly like plastic in victory. They don't celebrate. They don't strategize. They work. They hold the keys. They keep going. And when a junior producer wanders in, nervous about the new protocols, overwhelmed by the checklists that look like an accusation, Jimin takes the clipboard, ticks a box, hands it back and says, "These are instruments too. You'll get good at playing them." The kid smiles, and it's not the hero worship kind. It's the "I might belong here" kind. They play one more run-through before lunch because the room asked for it, because the day is ordinary and earned, because the best proof they've got is the way a chorus that used to skate away now holds their weight like a promise kept.